welcome to the living room once again. Today, we are continuing our special segment for the month of June, which is Conversations with Women Leaders. And I have Tiffany Joy Murchison with me today as part of this special segment to share about her journey as an entrepreneur. What kind of a leader is she, and basically just to share a little bit more about some of the challenges as well that she's overcome. So Tiffany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself to the viewers out there?
Sure. I'm Tiffany Joy Murchison. I am the CEO and founder of TJM Co Media Boutique. We are a public relations firm here in Brooklyn, New York. We focus on nonprofit clients, government agencies, community-based organizations, and we do some work in politics as well. All of our clients, actually, we say have to have a purpose. Our tagline is where PR meets purpose. And at the end of the day, the work we do has to do some good. So that's why we choose the clients that we choose very carefully. I'm also a mom, about to send the last kid off to college soon. So looking forward to that next chapter as well.
Wow, that's kind of an exciting time for you. And tell me, Tiffany, that you've been in the corporate sector for quite a fair bit before branching out on your own.
Yes, I worked at one corporation for about 15 years and then was laid off. I stayed home for about 2 years, and during that time, I actually finished my undergraduate degree, got my bachelor's. Bought a house. I had a kid, bought a house, bought a car, got laid off, back to back, 1 year after the other almost. So I stayed home for about 2 years, traveled, dragged my daughter around, and then went back to work in the financial services sector, was there for about almost 4 years. And then Hurricane Sandy hit New York City. I was laid off again a second time. And then about 6 or 7 months later, the same company called me back, worked again for about 2 years, market downturn, was laid off a third time.
Well, that's like three times. Three times is a charm anyway.
I want to say it was 3 times in probably a 6 or 7 year span of time.
For anyone to branch out on their own, right? It's not a very easy decision to make. A lot of times you see people will say, okay, I do want to start my own business. And that's purely because they feel like I don't want to answer to anyone. I don't want to work for someone. I just want to basically do my own thing. But that doesn't work because that's not the pure motivation. In fact, I believe that as an employer, you have it so much more easier than being your own business owner, because you pull in longer hours and sometimes it takes months before you actually kind of see the results or the business even making money. So because with all the responsibilities that you have, as a mother, you have your own house, I'm sure you have mortgage to pay and all that. So what made you step out to start your own business?
It was God, actually. That was not my choice. I always saw myself working for a corporation, in some high executive level position. That was always the way I envisioned myself. Even when I was a kid, I was going to go to law school. I was going to be, this high powered attorney. And anything I would have done on the entrepreneurial side would have been on the side. I may have owned a business. I thought about like owning a laundromat or owning property, things that were passive income. But my parents and my step parents had been entrepreneurs my whole life. I never really paid it any attention, but for the most part, they were entrepreneurs in some right for my whole life. So I guess it was always there. I did always have, even as a kid, some side project to make money. I used to make signs for my parents' businesses and charge them $2 a sign. And I had like lemonade stands and all that stuff. But I still always felt like I needed, or I was supposed to have a good job. That's how we were raised. Go to college, get an education, get a good job, stay there 20 years, 30 years, retire, and invest. But when I got laid off the first time, I remember saying I had had surgery and I was out on disability and I had to have a second surgery. But me being the good employee I was, went back to work in between the two surgeries instead of staying out. And when I went back to work in between the two surgeries is when they told me that I was being laid off. But prior to going back, I remember sitting in my backyard and saying to the Lord, I don't really want to work there anymore, God. If I had a way that I could just pay off all my bills and not have to go back to that job, I wouldn't. So when I walked in and they laid me off, immediately I was like, okay, I asked for this. I asked for a way to pay my bills and not go back to that job. I had been with that company, like I said, almost 15 years. I felt like I had outgrown it. My boss at the time had passed away a few months earlier. It just didn't feel the same. And so I realized that God said, okay, you want a way to not go back to work? I'm going to give you that way. What I didn't ask for was what I was supposed to do after that. I just said I didn't want to go back to work. And he said, okay. So I didn't go back to work. Folks said, oh, you should sue. You know, you were next in line in succession for his position and da-da-da. And I said, no, I asked for this. It'd be a slap in the face. So I went and had my second surgery. They had to keep me on for another, I think like 6 or 7 months. And then I walked away with a pretty decent severance package. And the first thing I did was write my check for tithes to my church and paid for my tuition and finished school. That was the first thing I did. I traveled a little bit, and you know, with children, it's expensive. So I started to notice that my bank account was getting a little low, and I went back into work in corporate America. I don't think I was ever supposed to go back the second time. And then when I got laid off the second time, I actually formed the LLC for my business. And I did a few things here and there, but I was never into it full time. When I went back to work the third time, I remember saying to God, all right, God, I know I'm supposed to start a business, but I'm just going to go back for 6 months and I'm going to save up some money because they were bringing me back in as a consultant. The money was great. And my plan was to just save so that when I did go out on my own, I'd have a nice nest egg. And of course, that didn't happen because you never do what you plan. I am the person in my family that everybody leans on. So if writing a check could solve the problem, I would. And God said, okay, I'm going to take away your ability to do that until you listen. So I tell everybody, he kicked me out of corporate America 3 times before I paid attention to what it was I was supposed to be doing, which is this.
That, I mean, I think it's most of us have that desire, and when we ask, right, we expect to do it our way. I think that's the most rational and logical way of doing it, right? We want to work for a short span of time. We want to save enough money and then feel like, okay, I'm ready right now to step out. But sometimes when God asks us to do something, it's always that, you know, it's very different, and his ways are always like really higher. And sometimes you also have to question yourself and say, are you serious? Like, are we like doing this? We have no, there's no safety net. But I mean, he's the safety net after all. And I also like the fact, Tiffany, that you also shared that you tithe to your local church.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's actually something that's also important, that that's your severance pay, and you haven't, I'm assuming you haven't found your next job yet, but still you put your trust and you decided to tithe from your severance pay.
Yep, the entire 10%, which was a pretty big check. My mother thought I was crazy. People were like, are you writing a check for what, to who? And I was like, listen, it's his. And people would ask me, like I said, my daughter was born in 2003. I closed on my house in 2006. I bought a car in 2007. I got laid off in 2009. I graduated college I got laid off in 2008. I graduated college in 2009. And people said to me, how did you pay a car note, pay a mortgage? And I was like, Jesus, I didn't do it. I tithe. People would say, how do you do that? I pay my tithes. That was always my response. I pay my tithes. I remember one day my pastor saying that not tithing was unbelief. Like you didn't trust that God was going to absolutely do it, that he could do it, that he was going to do it. And I remember being like, oh my God, no, I don't want to have unbelief. I don't want to, no. So when that money came, I wrote the check.
It's really good because sometimes what happens is, even in our part of the world, in Asia, a lot of times people mistake the idea that the 10% of the tithes is more like some kind of a membership fee that we pay. And some people actually feel like, no, I don't really want to go to the church and be part of a church because I have to give this 10%. But sometimes that financial stewardship is so important because you not only learn to trust, but I think that you also feel like that money has no hold on you because you can't be serving two masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's really good that you are basically like you are moving along in the direction that the Lord has set for you, but at the same time, it's not at your own pace.
No, not at all. It's totally his pace. There were days when I felt like I was going to quit. There are days when I was like, I'm done. I'm going to fix my resume and I'm going to get a job. Like, this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. And my daughter would be like, you're not going to go get a job. No, you're not. So it's not easy. Entrepreneurship is definitely not for the faint at heart. Like I said, I never planned on being my own boss full time. I always thought I would have, this high salary and then have businesses on the side and things on the side. I always felt like I was going to be very wealthy, but not that way. And I made a lot of money early on in my life at like 24, 25 years old, which was 20 some odd years ago. I made $60,000, $70,000 a year, which was a lot for that time and a lot for me to be that young. So again, I was the person that if there was an issue, if somebody in the family needed something, no matter what it was, I was the first person to come to the aid and to write a check. It didn't matter the amount, didn't matter who, if somebody needed something, that was the way that I thought I was supposed to support. And that was another lesson for me in this, especially once I became a mom, that, my kids had to come first and I couldn't take out of our house, unless we were overflowing. I had to learn that lesson. And I remember, saying to God, like, I used to make 6 figures and I feel like I'm scrambling. There are days I'm not sure what we're going to eat. And he would say, and I'm going to give it back to you when you learn to do with it what I tell you to do with it. Yeah, I want you to be a blessing, but you need to learn to listen to me, to be a blessing to who I tell you to be a blessing to. Stop just giving it away. I thought that was the right thing to do. And he said, no, I'll tell you who to give a check to and who to write a check for and who to pay for this for. It's not who you want, it's who I want. Get out of my way is what he said to me. And for a long time, I had to learn that my value in my family and the kingdom wasn't the money that I had, and he wouldn't give it back. He would not give it back. We struggled we always had. Sometimes it felt like I was hanging on by a thread, but he was clear that until I learned these lessons, he wasn't going to, something flying, you have the door open. He wasn't going to give it back to me. And he did it. It was a minute.
It's really amazing to hear that, that you had that so much of that trust and faith as well. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on this as well, because I wrote an article like some time back, just I think a couple of weeks ago, but that was more on marketplace ministry and having business owners in the marketplace. And as we are talking about this, right, I just wanted to just touch a little bit more on that to say that, sometimes that I think for us, we are all not called to serve in the capacity in a church. We are not. We are not called to be like ministers or pastors at times, but what we are called to do is, beside being employees, we are called to the marketplace because that's how we are the salt and light of the earth.
Right.
And when you are placed in a marketplace, our principles, the way we do things, they differ a lot from the way worldly people do things.
They do.
And that's why sometimes, but we being in the marketplace itself as a business owner, we are a testimony because, we see a lot of times, even now during this time, during the pandemic, like some of the business owners who are believers, they are flourishing, they are really doing well, even in the times like this. So
Yes.
sometimes it's really good that you were placed at this to start your own business during that time, so you can actually share your story of like really how it's being done, and it's not through a conventional way, I would say.
No, not at all conventional. I tell people all the time, if I had advice to give to entrepreneurs, I would tell them to plan. I tell people I didn't jump, I was pushed. I absolutely was pushed. I don't regret it. I don't regret how it happened. Um, Everybody says hindsight is 2020, or if you went back, what would you change? I don't know that I would, because I probably wouldn't have the perspective and be the person that I am if my life had been different than what it was. I truly believe that there is a plan. And I truly believe that even the things that God didn't ordain to happen to me and for me, he allowed to happen to me and for me to learn a lesson, right? I'm hard-headed, I'm headstrong. I've always danced to the beat of my own drum. So I tell people now, I know he sits there, shakes his head like, okay, Tiffany, you're on the edge here, because I am that person. I am, like I said, very headstrong. I'm going to do it my way. And, except for when it comes to God, so I have to learn to, I used to say, people say, be still. What? I can't be still. God gave me the talents. God gave me the smarts. And look, the enemy has this little fly bothering me. I swear, God gave me the talent, the skill, the strength, the tenacity. So in my opinion, I was following what the Lord wanted me to do, because I was using all the gifts and talents that he gave me, not realizing that I wasn't really relying on him in doing that. And I learned probably during the pandemic as well, the best lesson that I learned was that being still isn't the same thing as doing nothing. They're not the same thing. And so being still and waiting on God is not the same thing as being lazy and doing nothing. And that's how I always heard it when somebody said, oh, you should be still. Never, never am I going to be still. But I've had to learn that they're not the same thing.
And I think it's like what we would say is like, being still is really being at rest, because when you are being at rest, that's when you are directed to do the right thing at the right time. And
Right.
And it's following that peace that's within you. That would how I would actually kind of interpret being still. Rather than just sitting down, not doing anything at all, then you can't actually move a car that's parked. You have to
Right.
get it moving to actually kind of give it directions to like which way to turn, and to make sure that it's headed towards its destination. And for yourself, right, I just wanted to ask, because I mean I could have been wrong in this area, but as far as I understand, sometimes being in a public PR kind of industry is also a little bit of I would say it's kind of a little bit of where you do a lot more entertainment. That's also part of the role and responsibilities as a PR practitioner, where you also have to go out, you have to entertain, you have to drink, and sometimes it comes to a point where you feel like, do I conform to the worldly standards of doing things, or do I take a stand for myself? I mean, how did you actually kind of do that when you were when you were engaging with your clients and all that?
So that's never been who I am. I've never been a person to conform. Even before I was saved, I grew up in a church, but I went to college and partied and all that kind of stuff. Even in that space, I didn't drink any alcohol until I was probably like almost 30, like literally, no matter where. And I was in, like I said, I always had a side job or a side hustle. So I was in spaces where there was celebrities and, record labels and all of that stuff at a very young age. And I didn't partake then. That's just always been who I am. So for me, the not conforming was easy, because it's just who I am. I think part of that is because I come from a family where there was a lot of substance abuse, and I watched that tear through my family at a young age. So was always determined that was not going to be me. So, I was the kid. I've never tried any drugs. I've never tried to smoke a cigarette. Most people are like, you've never even tried a cigarette? Nope. And growing up in New York, you would think that, I had all the exposure, and that just wasn't who I am. So, when I'm out and about, I am still who I am. I don't conform. I'm very careful to not, I'm very careful to lead by example and not by judgment, because I am around people sometimes that do things, and in my mind I'm going, they are absolutely crazy, but I can't necessarily show that. But most people don't offer me stuff. I think they kind of just already know I come with that persona. One of my mentors in PR always laughs. She's like, if you want somebody that's going to show up and be corporate, call Tiffany, because she's going to have a suit on and a bun in her hair and a bag. Like, I'm real corporate when I come in the room. So I think folks automatically know that there's no nonsense here. And, socially, I do partake in alcohol. I drink wine, things like that. But I'm never out of character. I'm never drunk. Never. You'll never catch me anything like that. It's just, you have to, everything in moderation. So for me, it's pretty easy. I've always been headstrong and always danced to the beat of my own drum. Several years ago, I would probably say maybe 12 years or so ago, my girlfriend owns a restaurant, a West Indian restaurant. And I went in the restaurant one day and her manager just started to cry. And, we're all Christian. And, they said, Miss Gwen, something's wrong. You want to talk to Tiffany? And she said, yes. And she brought me in the back and she began to prophesy over me certain things. And one of the things that she said to me was, millions of dollars are going to pass through your hands for the kingdom of God. And it's because he knows he can trust you. He knows you won't be starstruck. He knows you won't get pulled into the culture. Millions of dollars are going to go through your hands for the kingdom of God. And I always remembered that. That just never left me. And I'm like, okay. So now when I'm in rooms with, people that are doing things that I don't do, most of the time they don't do it because I'm in the room, honestly. But, when I find myself in situations, I am politely to decline. And if people ask, I'll give them my opinion. Again, I'm careful to not browbeat anybody with my Bible. I just live by example. If you ask, I'll give you the explanation. But I'd rather you feel not comfortable to do what you do, but I'd rather you not feel judged, because then maybe you'll come and you'll ask me. Maybe you'll talk to me about what you're going through. Maybe you'll have a conversation with me about Jesus. I talk about Jesus all day long. At work, they know. Like, that's just who I am. At home, it's always, so I just am who I am.
Because I think, like what you said, sometimes it's, I think a lot of times when we go about doing evangelism, we feel like we're just pushing down people, faith and religion down people's throat. But I think the best way is to evangelize, is to be a testimony yourself. I mean, we are like living epistles. People see us by the lives that we live, and they sometimes want what we have. Like, like, how did it get it so easy for them? How the doors of how do they get favor so much? Like, doors just open for them. So that's really being a testimony itself. And I like the fact that you said that you don't want to be judged, not because of anything, but because you want to really set an example, and that's who you are, and you've never conformed to that standard. And Tiffany, just share with me in terms of your book, right? I know that you wrote a book. Like, what inspired you to write a book?
Again, I was pushed. A couple of years ago, I joined a group called Women in PR. I was assigned a mentor. And talk about favor. The mentor that I was assigned happened to be one of the co-founders of the organization, and we hit it off. She had been a public relations professional for 30 some odd years, and just really took me under her wing, understanding that this was a new career for me, so to speak. And she challenged me one day. My homework assignment was to write a book and then to deliver a workshop on the book that I wrote. And she said, you need to write a DIY guide on PR. So get to writing. I was like, what? And she gave me 2 weeks. And I wrote the book in 2 weeks. And I had a workshop. I invited business owners to come, and it was a paid workshop. So I did have a few people pay to come and speak, and everybody got a copy of the book. And I did a class on DIY PR, blah, blah, blah. And that was okay. I didn't really push it. It was just, okay, it was a challenge. I got it done. It's over with. But as 2020 came in and the pandemic hit, I started to think about how different business owners would have to market themselves and build their reputation based on where we were in the marketplace, in the industry, and that it was never going to change. It's never going to be the same as it was. We may see some things that are similar, but the marketplace is never going to be the same. And I also thought about how not just the pandemic, but the social justice pandemic would impact businesses. And so I decided to write a second edition. So that was, I didn't get pushed to do that one. But I did write a second edition and added some more pages so that it could be a tangible book, not just a digital version. And I added in some things about having a personal touch, because that's what we were missing in business. We couldn't see each other. Everybody was on Zoom. So you needed to do things that would touch somebody in a different way. We had always had a knack at TJM Co for sending gifts out, even prior to the pandemic. We sent out, I find the jazziest, I'm a gadget person. So I find the jazziest little things to send out. So Christmas of 2019, all of our clients and vendors got reusable straws and a nice little branded package with a brush and like a cleaning system and everything like that. And they loved it. And so we always found ways, things that were relevant, you know, everybody's going eco-friendly. And so I wrote some things about that, personal touches that you can add to make people, even though you're physically distant, that you don't have to be emotionally and spiritually distant. And I just decided that I needed to add some of that in. And so the second edition was published in 2020.
Right. That's great that you have actually added personal touch. I think that's something that we all seem to be lacking these days. And sometimes I think the current situation is not really helping because we don't really get to see a lot. I mean, a lot of times businesses are just done via like emails and calls. Even calls are so seldom these days. We hardly meet people for coffee, just to catch up, or it's just a different world. But I think personal touch really goes to build a relationship, and it also kind of makes people think about another thought that goes behind the thing. I mean, sometimes we find that it's like, people generally give very cliche stuffs, right? Like not practical things. And when you receive something from that, you can actually see how much of thought has gone into this, like how much has the person thought of the recipient and how the recipient would feel before, even if it's like a corporate gift, but there's still something that's an involvement there. And being a business leader yourself and someone, a woman of faith, is there a leader in the Bible that, that you follow, or that you feel that the principles are something that you hold on to?
I don't necessarily know that there's any one particular leader. I think that as I learn more and more about the Bibles and stories, the Bible and the stories in them and the characters, I think at some juncture I can probably associate with many. I think about, not Jonah not wanting to go to Nineveh, being in the whale. I know my pastor recently was talking about Joseph and how his brothers had, abandoned him and set him up to die, and all the favor that he had. I can relate to that. I think for me, the scriptures themselves resonate with me more than the actual characters. And my favorite one, at least at this point in time, is Jeremiah 29:11. Because I had to lean on that, like I said, raising a daughter and, starting a business and not knowing sometimes where the check is going to come from. I had to keep reminding myself that God had plans to prosper me and not to harm me. That's a big one. A couple of years ago, I was stuck on, guard your heart, for from it flows the springs of life, because that wasn't something that I had done very well. And I didn't want my daughter to not learn that early on. So I tried to learn that so she could learn it, right? Because it's by example. It's not do as I say, it's not do as I say and not as I do. Kids are sponges and they do everything you do. So I don't necessarily know if it's just one character per se. I think we all could probably say that each story in the Bible, there's a part of our life where we could associate or have empathy, or that particular character resonates with us at that point in time, at least for me. I think I'm multifaceted in just my personality and the things that I've done, things that I've experienced. So at some point in time, I probably was every character from Ruth to Joseph to Jonah in the whale to, I've probably been except for the Samaritan woman, I've probably been every other character you can possibly think of. So I think the scriptures I'm a student, And so the scriptures and the studying, I go to a non-denominational church. It's a teaching church. It's like being in school. So I'm in there and I'm taking my notes and I'm looking up words and he's telling us the Hebrew translation for this and that. Like I'm a student. So that gets me. So it's the actual words that really resonate with me more than the characters themselves.
Nice. And if you and how would you describe your leadership style?
I'm a horrible supervisor. I'm a great manager. I'm a horrible supervisor. I do not do well anymore at micromanaging folks. I'm a great manager. I'm a great leader in the sense that I like to see people grow. I am not one of those bosses or what have you that want to hold all the information. I want people to flourish. And if that means you flourish and you grow and you leave and you go forward, I still have relationships with like my very first employees. I think people should learn and flourish and not be afraid. I probably give my team a little too much freedom sometimes. I realize I need to rein it back in to make sure that we don't miss deadlines and things of that nature. But I really just do believe that a good leader builds up people so that they can leave you or that they can step into your shoes, because who knows what God has for me next, right? So if there's not somebody that can do what I do, then that's a void. And apparently there's a reason for it. Otherwise he wouldn't have me doing it. So, I'm definitely a great manager. I'll help you learn. I'll teach you anything, but I'm a horrible supervisor. I'm horrible. Like, I expect you to just be here at 10. Like, I don't want to have to check for you to be there at 10, but I guess that's because that's how I worked. So I'm a horrible supervisor, but I'm a good manager, I think.
Nice. And it's like, I always ask my guests, so is there like a code that you live by, that you hold on to?
Yes. And I teach my daughter this all the time. I am never worried about the glass being half empty. My glass is always, always half full. And even in the event that there is nothing in my glass, I at least have a glass. So I have a starting point. I tell her that all the time. I live by that. That's one of them. And then the second thing that she'll probably tell you that I say all the time is that you do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. So those are the two things that I think keep me going day to day is, at least I have a glass. I have a starting point. If I have something to put something in, then I'm ahead of the game. So that's always my motto.
And as we are coming to the end of the show, right, Tiffany, is there any practical tips or any advice that you want to give to the viewers out there?
Pay your tithes. For those that are parents, that are moms, like I was a single mom for a long time, your kids are watching. They pay attention to what you do, even when you don't think that they are. So what you do on a daily basis, how you get up, how you show up, how you don't give up is what your children are going to mimic. My daughter the other day got money from somewhere and I walked past and she was paying her own tithes. I didn't even have to remind her to do it. She just does it because she knows that's what we're supposed to do. And when I'm not at work, or if she's 17, they tell me she runs my office better than I run it, that she's just like me when I'm not there. So she's been watching. So if you're a parent, whether it's a dad or a mom, your kids are always watching. And the other thing that I would say is sometimes what we think we're good at is not necessarily what our purpose is, but just pay attention. Like, just have your ears in tune. Everybody has a purpose, and nobody's as smaller than the other. Everybody is not meant to be a billionaire. So don't compare. Stay off of social media looking at what it looks like other people are doing. I know they only show you what they want you to see. Just don't compare. Just stay in tune to what God has for you, because what's for you is for you, no matter what.
And I like that because it's an illusion that's being created, right? People look at social media platforms and they look at other people's businesses or how they live, and they feel that's a success story. But sometimes that's really not. I think God's success is really very different from what the world has to offer. Sometimes you don't have to have that amount of money, or that amount of things to be successful or be happy, because God sees you and you're already a success. And that's a reminder that we need to have that, whatever that we do, whatever we have on hand, we are already successful and we are prosperous despite of how much we have or what kind of investments we have. So it's
Right.
like, when we keep on looking at all these wrong things, this is when we feel like we need to match up to it. And when we fail, we get discouraged and we get disappointed so easily, thinking that we are not up to par or we're not up to standard. So I always believe that we should not only conform. I also believe that we are set apart to do something else, and as long as you are running your own race, you will get to the destination. Like, I think God never shortchanges any one of us.
No, not at all. I have an aunt, and I always laughed because she's the most content person I've ever met in my life. She's never had a whole lot of money at any one time, but she has probably absolutely done everything she has wanted to do. She saved some money. When we were kids, she used to put bill money in envelopes. She would take her paycheck and put $5, so that at the end of the month, she'd have enough money to pay each one of her bills, the light bill, the gas bill. She used to tell me she saved all her dimes, and I would ask her, why did she only save the dimes? And she said, because I can't afford to save all my change. So I save all the dimes, and all those dimes got her on a vacation every year. She went on a vacation. When her kids got older, she bought herself a fur coat because she didn't have to spend that money on her kids anymore. But she never had a whole lot of money at any given time. And she was the happiest, most content woman that I had ever known. And I remember one day talking to her and her saying, everything I said, she was like, okay, I'm gonna put that on my list, my prayer list. I'm gonna put that on my prayer list. And I kind of chuckled and I was like, Aunt Debbie, that's a long prayer list. And she said, listen, God said he could do all things. I didn't say it, he did. She was like, and it's my job to hold him accountable for what he said. He said he could do all things. So I can put everything I need to put on my prayer list because he could do all things. And I was like, you know what, Aunt Debbie, that makes a lot of sense. So, and she's always been happy and content and never had a whole lot of money, nothing, but she was mindful with how she managed it. It's more about your outgo than it is your income. And most people don't realize that. And she just had a perspective that I guess her glass was always half full.
Nice. And thanks so much for sharing. I think that's really true. And I think that's an example that we need to follow as well. So I just want to thank you, Tiffany, for your time, for really coming out to share. And of course, we will share, when we share Tiffany's bio in our social media platforms, we'll also put in the link for her book.
Yes, on Amazon, yes. Hard copy and Kindle.
Yes, and you can also reach out to her for any of the services that she offers, because I'm not sure if you're still doing any webinars as well.
Yeah, we probably will be doing some. We're on a break for this. I've got to get this kid off to college, but in the fall, there'll be some more classes.
All right, sure. So we will also share that. And so thanks so much, Tiffany, for joining us. I really enjoyed this, and I think it was really great to have you share.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Now get some sleep.
You should get some sleep. It's like early morning for me. I'm up already, so I'm just gonna go and start the whole day. Yeah. So
Okay.
yes, thanks so much for coming in, and for viewers out there, I feel that this is going to be really a great encouragement for everyone, or someone who's even like trying to come up with their own business. Don't stick to the old ideas of having to draw a business plan, thinking of how much money you want to invest. If God has placed something in your heart, it's his responsibility to make sure it comes to pass.
That's right. That's right. 6 years and I'm still standing. So.
And yes, thanks so much for watching this, and do subscribe to the videos, and also like kind of share this to the other women out there who might be going through a similar challenge or being in a similar situation, so that you will encourage other women as well.
All righty. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tiffany.